Upon anniversary day of Arbaeen Husseini. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all your prayers and azadaris on this Muharram. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making us the true followers of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Inshallah, we will start off our Arbaeen programs with the recitation of Quran, verses 24 through 30 of Surah Mubarakah Anfal, inshallah, which will be recited by Brother Haj Karim Bassam. I will be reciting the Farsi translation, and Brother Muhammad Al-Ammara will be reciting the English translations. After reciting Quran, we will recite Ziyarat Arbaeen, and hopefully after that, Brother Kauthar will be here for speech. We'll do some azadaris, and we'll do Asr and noon and afternoon prayers, inshallah, and lunch will be served, inshallah. از محترم حاج کریم بسام خواهش میکنم که تشریف برن و آیه 24 تا 30 سوره مبارکه انفال تلاوت بفرمایید با صلوات بر محمد و آل بیت محمد. اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه وأنه إليه تحشرون. واتقوا فتنة لا تصيبن الذين ظلموا منكم خاصة واعلموا واذكروا إذ أنتم قليل مستضعفون في الأرض تخافون أن يتخطفكم الناس فآواكم وأيدكم بنصره ورزقكم من الطيبات لعلكم تشكرون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تخونوا الله والرسول وتخونوا أماناتكم وأنتم تعلمون. واعلموا أنما أموالكم وأولادكم فتنة وأن الله عنده أجر عظيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن تتقوا الله يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم ويغفر لكم والله ذو الفضل العظيم. وإذ يمكر بك الذين كفروا ليثبتوك أو يقتلوك أو يخرجوك ويمكرون ويمكر الله والله خير الماكرين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة مع الإخلاص وقبلهما الصلوات.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد و آل محمد. پناه میبرم به خداوند پناه میبرم به خداوند از شر شیطان رانده شده، به نام خداوند بخشنده مهربان. ای کسانی که ایمان دارید، خدا و رسولش را پاسخ نیکو گویید، آنگاه که شما را به چیزی که زندگیتان میبخشد دعوت میکند. و بدانید که خدا بین آدمی و قلب او حائل می شود و اوست که همه شما به سویش محشور خواهید شد. و بترسید از فتنه یعنی به منظور آشوب و نفاق افغانی که بین شما تنها دامنگیر ستمگاران نمی شود. و بدانید که خدا سخت مجازات است. و با یاد آورید آنگاه که شما اندک بودید و از ناتوانان این سرزمین به شمار می آمدید و بیم آن داشتید که مردم شما را بربایند. او یعنی خدا شما را پناه داد و با یاری خویش نیرومندتان کرد و از چیزهای پاک روزیتان داد، باشد که سپاس گویید. ای کسانی که ایمان دارید، به خدا و رسول خیانت نکنید و دانسته به اماناتی که به شما سپرده می شود خیانت نورزید. بدانید که اموالتان و فرزندانتان وسیله برای آزمایشند و پاداش بزرگ نزد خداوند است. ای کسانی که ایمان دارید، از خدا بترسید و شما فرقان یعنی محک تشخیص حق از باطل عطا خواهد کرد و کارهای بدتان را می زداید و شما را می آمرزد، زیرا که خدا صاحب فضل بزرگی است. و با یاد آور که چگونه کافران درباره تو نیرنگ کردند تا تو را در بند بکشند و یا بکشند یا از شهر بیرونت کنند. آنان نیرنگ می کنند و خدا نیز نیرنگ و تدبیر می کند. خدا بهترین تدبیر کنندگان است. صدق الله العلی العظیم. صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد. اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. O you who have faith, answer Allah and the Apostle when he summons you to that which will give you life. Know that Allah intervenes between a man and his heart, and that you will be mustered towards him. And beware of a punishment which shall not visit the wrongdoers among you exclusively. And know that Allah is severe in retribution. Remember when you were few, abased in the land, and feared lest the people should despoil you. And He gave you refuge, and strengthened you with His help, and provided you with all the good things so that you may give thanks. O you who have faith, do not betray Allah and the Apostle, and do not betray your trusts knowingly. Know that your possessions and children are only a test, and that Allah, with Him is a great reward. O you who have faith, if you are wary of Allah, He will appoint a criterion for you, and absolve you of all your misdeeds and forgive you, for Allah is dispenser of a mighty grace. When the faithless plotted against you to take you captive or to kill or expel you, they plotted and Allah devised, and Allah is the best of devisers. JazakAllah al-Ali al-Azim.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. I would like to thank Haj Karim Bassam and Brother Muhammad Al-Ammara for reciting Quran in the English translations. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, the rest of our program for today will be reciting Ziyarat Arbaeen, Right afterwards, we will recite Ziyarat Ashura. Afterwards, we will have Haj Kausar Khan's speech. The title of the speech for today is the continuation from last 2 nights, Karbala, Protection from Sins. Right after the speech, we will have some time for Azadari, inshallah, and then we will go to Dhuhr and Asr prayers, inshallah. With that being said, Haj Karim Bassam will be reciting Ziyarat Arbaeen, and afterwards we'll do Ziyarat Ashura as well, inshallah. سر سلامتی خودتان صلوات محمد پسند ختم بفرمایید عزیزان.
يا رحمة الله الواسعة يا باب النجاة الأمة مظلوم مظلوم كربلاء كربلاء يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
حضور سيدي ومولاي ومعتمدي والإمام الحسين عليه السلام نيابة بوالدين أو والد والدين أخوان أخوات المؤمنين والمؤمنات قربة طاعة إلى الله تعالى. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام على ولي الله وحبيبه. السلام على خليل الله ونجيبه. السلام على سفي الله وابن السفي. السلام على الحسين المظلوم الشهيد. السلام على سير الكربات وقتيل الأبرات. اللهم إني أشهد أنه وليك وابن وليك. اللهم إني أشهدك أني ولي لما والاه وعدو لمن عادى وسفيك وابن سفيك والفائز بكرامتك. أكرمته بالشهادة وحبوت بالسعادة.
اینجا فرق میکنه. چیز میکنه باش. نه خواهش میکنم. النبي السلام على ولي الأب السلام على ولي وحبيبي ما صحيح دیگه چیکار کنم از طرف شروع کنم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام على ولي الله وحبيبه السلام على خليل الله ونجيبه السلام على سفي الله وابن سفيه السلام على الحسين المظلوم الشهيد السلام على أسير الكربات وقتيل الأبرار اللهم إني أشهد أنه وليك وابن وليك اللهم إني أشهدك أني ولي لمن والاه وعدو لمن عاداه وسفيك وابن سفيك والفائز بكرامتك أكرمته بالشهادة وحبوته بالشهادة واجتبيته بطيب الولادة وجعلته سيدا من السادة وقائدا من القادة وزاهدا من الزادة وأعطيته مواريث الأنبياء وجعلته حجة حجة على خلقك من الأوصياء فازر في الدعاء ومنع النصح وبذل مهجته فيك فيستنقذ عبادك من الجهالة وحيرة الزلال وقد توازر عليه من غرت الدنيا وباع هذو بالأرذل الأدنى وشرى آخرته بالثمن الأوكس وتغترس وتردى في الحيوان واستختك واسخت نبيك وأتى من عبادك أهل الشقاق والنفاق وحملة الأوزار المستوجبين النار فجاهدهم فيك صابرا محتسبا حتى سفك في طاعتك دموع تصبح واستبيح حريمه اللهم فلعنهم لعنا وبيلا وعذبهم عذابا أليما. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الأوصياء، أشهد أنك أمين الله وابن أمينه، عشت سعيدا ومزيت حميدا ومت فقيدا مظلوما شهيدا. واشهد ان الله منجز ما وعدك ومهلك من خذلك ومعذب من قتلك. واشهد انك وفيت بعهد الله وجاهدت في سبيله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله من قتلك ولعن الله من ظلمك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرزيت بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجزك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك المظلمات من ثيابها. واشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المسلمين ومعقل المؤمنين. واشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي. واشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الأسقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد أني بكم مؤمن وبيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع، ونسرتي لكم معدة حتى يأذن الله لكم فمعكم معكم لا مع عدوكم صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وأجسادكم وشاهدكم وغائبكم وظاهركم وباطنكم آمين رب العالمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا رب.
أزور سيدي ومولاي معتمدي ورجائي زخري وذخيرتي في آخرتي ودنياي أبا عبد الله الحسين زيارة مني ونيابة عن والدي ووالدي وعن إخواني وعن إخواتي وعن أحبائي وأقربائي وجيراني وعن جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات قربة إلى الله تعالى.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرته. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا سار الله وابن سار والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله. لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام وجلت وعظمت المصيبة في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت. ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشيائهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة ولعن الله على الزياد وعلى مروان ولعن الله بني أمية قاتبة ولعن الله ابن مرجان ولعن الله عمر بن الساد ولعن الله شمرا ولعن الله أمة نسجت والجمت وتنقبت لقتالك بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك فاسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب صارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيا بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونسب لك الحرب وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمي وجوري عليكم وعلى أشيائكم برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وتقربوا إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب وبالبراءة من أشيائهم وأتباعهم إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم فاسألوا الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، واسألوا أن يبلغ المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني تلبي ساريكم مع إمام هدى مهدي ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم، واسألوا الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يؤتيني بمصابيبكم أفضل ما يؤتي مصابا بمصيبته، مصيبة ما أعظم وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعل لي في مقامي هذا ممن تنال منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موت وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليه وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. بنيت 7 مرتبة 100 مرة. اللهم لنا ولا ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن الإصابة التي جادت الحسين وشايت وبايت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. این فراز از دعا را همه با هم انشاءالله زمزمه میکنیم به یاد اربعین حسینی و بین الحرمین انشاءالله همه با هم. السلام علیک یا ابا عبدالله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي ابن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت ولا ظالم باللأن مني وأبدا بي أولا ثم الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا ولعن عبيد الله ابن زياد وابن مرجان وعمر ابن السعد والشمرة وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجدة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين، لك على مصابهم، الحمد لله على عظيم رضيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
دو رکعت نماز ادیه.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على Muhammad وآل Muhammad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us this recitation of Ziyarat Arbaeen, Ziyarat Ashura, and our Azadaris, inshallah. We will continue our program, and I would like to thank Haj Karim Bassan for recitation of Arbaeen, Ziyarat Arbaeen and Ziyarat Ashura. Today will be the last day, or today's program will conclude our 2024 Muharram programs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again accept all of our azadaris, inshallah. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of those volunteers, brothers and sisters who worked tirelessly during these 40 days to serve you with the best of hospitality that they could. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them all ajr and thawab, inshallah. And anybody who in any way did some type of volunteers, our chef, our two brothers who are working in the back room for the sound and broadcasting our online programs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him all ajr and thawab, inshallah. And lastly, I would like to also thank Ajaga Mudaris, who is not here, but he has been educating us for these 40 nights, for all these programs. And I hope that we're walking out today with a little bit more information about our faith, about our religion, inshallah. With that being said, I was going to say something else, but I forgot, I think. Yes, thank you all, and thank you all for participating. That's what I wanted to mention. Thank you all. A masjid, a program without participants doesn't mean anything. So I would like to thank you all again for taking the time, coming every day that we had program, and especially, again, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us and granting us the tawfiq to participate in these majalises, inshallah. And lastly, on behalf of everybody, mu'mineen and mu'minat, again, I would like to thank Haj Kauthar Khan for coming to our masjid for the last 2 nights and today for our programs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him ajr and thawab. For the well-being of Haj Kauthar Khan and his family, please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The title of today's speech is a continuation from last 2 nights, which Haj Kauthar Khan has started it, Karbala, Protection from Sins. And now I respectfully welcome Haj Kauthar Khan to Mumbai for the speech with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيد الأولين والآخرين والشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين أبو القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيت طيبين الطاهرين ولعنة أعدائهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to Him. May peace and blessings be upon His Prophet, the seal of all messengers, the best of those who have come before us and after us. And may peace and blessings be upon His pure and immaculate family. Please recite a loud salawat. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has brought us here, who has given us the tawfiq to be here. If He had not given us this tawfiq, and He had not given us the guidance to make the decision to show up here today, we would not be commemorating Sayyid al-Shuhada. All praise be to Allah, who has guided our hearts in unity so that we can collectively commemorate the event of Arbaeen. As I've said in the last 2 nights, there are many people who are not here from this community and many communities. They were here last Some of those people don't come to the masjid anymore. Some of those people have passed away. Whatever it is, that tawfiq was not given to them. That tawfiq has been given to us. This is something very important. There is a tradition, a hadith by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa There is a tradition by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and I recall this tradition every time someone passes away. And the tradition is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the soul of a mu'min from this worldly existence, it is when he or she has done everything good that they need to do in this dunya. Allah takes the soul of somebody when they have done everything good that they have needed to do. In other words, through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, He leaves a mu'min in this dunya because there is still something good that they have to do. There's still khayr that they have to do. We get sad when somebody leaves, when somebody passes away. But one of the things we don't realize is that if Allah would have left that person here, that person may have accumulated more bad deeds. This may not have been good for them in the akhirah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we look at our life, it is very important to look at this tawfiq of being able to come to these programs. And not just come to these programs, but being able to volunteer for these programs. And I know the brother, he thanked everybody. Notice how he thanked everyone. He thanked me, he thanked the volunteers. He thanked all of you guys. Nobody thanked him. So inshallah, you go and you thank him these last few nights, inshallah. So this tawfiq, God gives this tawfiq to us. When the criers of Imam Hussein on this day of Arbaeen, when they go and they walk, there are people who serve them at the Arbaeen walk. Why do they serve them? They serve them because they have been given the opportunity to serve them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them that tawfiq. They have a chance to serve them. They have an opportunity to serve them. You know, there is a story about Ayatollah Marashi Najafi. He was a marja that passed away, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, long time ago. In early 80s, I think it was, sometime in the 80s. Some of the older people here may have heard of him. Very, very pious man, extremely pious man. He was so pious, he never went to Hajj. He was one of the few Maraja that never went to Hajj because he was very poor. Now, he wasn't poor because he was just poor. The reason he didn't go to Hajj is because he would give all of his money away to the fuqara, to poor people. But what he would do is he'd take his money, and instead of saving it for Hajj, he'd buy books for poor people, and he'd go and travel to villages, and he'd distribute those books to the villages. So he never had money to go to Hajj. So instead, he'd had only enough money to go to ziyarat of Imam Hussein, alayhi salam. And he would do that many times. He would go for the ziyarat of Imam Hussein. In any case, when he died, in Qom, there's a big library. One of the biggest libraries there is a library dedicated to him. But it said he asked people, when he died in his will, he said, bury me at the entrance of the library. It was the library, it was his library, and then in his will, he said, donate these books, give these books away. But he said, bury me at the entrance. Not directly where the door is, but a little bit away at the side. And he said, because all of those people that come to seek the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt, I want to be at their feet. I want to be close to their feet. This is how much somebody with ma'rifah they recognize the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, the opportunities to learn. So us coming here today, us being here today, this is not a, I've spoken about this before. Some people view programs as, oh, programs, what are they going to have there? What's the speaker? What's the food? What's the this? What's the lighting? What's the parking? They have all the reasons why not to come. And sometimes it's the shaitan, right? Shaitan does this. Oh, I'm so tired. I have work. I have school the next morning. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we have to take off. I'm not saying that people have certain commitments. Sometimes we have commitments that might be more important than the masjid. Sometimes there's children and family. I understand all of that. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this tawfiq, rush towards this tawfiq. Take it. We may not have it. Even if we stay alive, we may lose our health. I just went to a program 2 weeks ago, and it was very interesting. I saw somebody there that I had known since I was a child, and I asked him, so how's your father? Now, his father used to teach me when I was a child. His father used to teach me when I was a child. So I'm 50 now. His father used to teach me when I was, 12 or something. So that was 40 years ago or so, 38 years ago. So I said, where's your father? He said, oh, he doesn't come to the masjid anymore. I said, why not? He said, he can't drive. It's hard for him to walk now. I have to take him everywhere. So I said, oh, okay. And we began talking, and I said, but you're at the masjid. Why didn't you just bring him? He said he just didn't feel like it. He couldn't make it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might give us all of those things. We even might have somebody to drive us. We might have somebody to do everything for us. But just our health will go. We may not even have the energy. Energy is something we take for granted, right? Oh, I have energy because I'm young. We may get to a point where we lose our health, where we can't even come to the masjid to listen to the majlis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So for this reason, coming here, one of the things that's very important is we come here, we pay respects to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but it is thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thanking him that one more year he's given us guidance. He's given us tawfiq and guidance to come. Now, in Los Angeles, we have a center there as well, and I know the intricacies of organizing programs. And for those of you who organize programs and are part of that piece of it, it takes an incredible amount of work. If you knew the amount of time the people who organize these programs, they take out of their day, they take out of their time, they lose sleep over. They're answering messages, they're wondering about the food, they're wondering about what time the masjid will open, they're wondering about the advertisement, updating the website, coordinating. And then many times those volunteers will come to me and they'll say, I'm so frustrated. So things didn't go exactly the way that I wanted them to go. And even with all of that trouble, with all of those problems, with all of those things, that's still a tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever trouble we go through in organizing these programs, whatever difficulty we go through in organizing these programs, many times this is a test for us. Something very important to realize. Many times it was a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to us, I'm going to give you the tawfiq to go to the majlis of Imam Hussein, for instance. But I'm going to make it a little bit hard, just a little bit. Now I understand most of you live very close to the masjid. It's not too difficult, but I'll make it a little bit hard in your life. Not very hard. Maybe something will get in the way. of going. Now, this is a test from God. It's a test for us to see what will we do. As we talked about khayr yesterday, that was a test. Every one of these tests has a little bit of difficulty in them. Every Islamic deed has a little bit of difficulty in it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never gives us a ton of difficulty. Okay? He just gives us a little in these types of things. Yes, we have big difficulties in life, but in these types of things, these are small difficulties. He just pressurizes us just a little bit, pushes us just a little bit. Because if he keeps us at the same level, then we stay stagnant. So he pushes us a little bit further. Now, if we don't pass that test, let's say we say, oh, I am too tired, I am this, I am that. And again, I know there are reasons. I'm not saying that there are never reasons. Obviously, things happen in family, children are sick, there are commitments. We have to give the correct huquq, the correct rights to different things in our life. We have rights to our families, we have rights to our parents, we have rights to different things in our families, but we also have, the masjid has a right. Actually, one of the things that will complain on the day of judgment is the masjid. The masjid will complain that it was empty. So we have a right to the masjid also. But it will sometimes be just a little bit difficult to show us one thing, and that is that how fragile we are. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this tawfiq, and he puts just a little, but he says, I'm going to give you the ability to go to the masjid, but it's not for free. I'm just going to give you a little bit of difficulty, more than it was last time. I'm going to pressurize you just a little bit more. Let's first see how much you complain. Just let's see that. That's the first thing, how much you complain. Because what the human being doesn't realize is that the barakah in these majalis sometimes is the difficulty we have to go through to be with Sayyid al-Shuhada. That's the barakah. So sometimes when we make our intention, especially in these nights of Arbaeen and in Muharram, we make the intention of, oh Allah, you've given me this tawfiq, and never take tawfiq for granted. We should never, ever, ever take tawfiq for granted. It can disappear any time, any moment in our lives. But when we get this tawfiq, we should expect a little bit of difficulty. And when that difficulty comes, we should also be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he still allowed us to get through that difficulty. And this is how we view the majlis of Imam Hussein. All of these stories about these people who could not make it to Karbala. They couldn't make it. The story of Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, he could not make it to Karbala. And many of the people who were in prison, they couldn't make it to Karbala. That's the lesson in Arbaeen. The lesson in Arbaeen is there's many people who wanted to be with Imam Hussein, but God didn't give them that tawfiq. Now, I've said this before in these majalis, there's some people who Imam Hussein called, they came. There's some people who called Imam Hussein and he said, stay where you are. Don't come. I don't want you next to me. I don't want you coming on this mission. You're good. There's some people who came to help Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein met them on the way and they said, take my horse, take this, take that. Imam Hussein said, no, we don't take it from people like you. We have to think about this. It's a very, very important thing. There were people who offered things to Imam Hussein on his journey as he's traveling. There was a man who came to me and said, I'm not going to go with you. I'm not that serious. Like, you're intense. I'm not going that far. But you take my horse and you can take my supplies. And the Imam refused. And then there are people who never even got the chance to hear about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They heard about it after. It's like hearing about a program after it happens. You know, it's funny, before I say this, please recite the salawat. We've all had this experience. We've all had this experience. It's a very funny experience, or maybe I've had this experience, you haven't. It's an experience that sometimes everybody gets invited except us. I'm sure we've all had that experience in life with families, with friends, a group of people get invited, but we don't get invited, and maybe we don't get offended, but we kind of shake our heads and we think, why didn't I get invited? Like, I thought I was important. I thought I was special. Why didn't I get invited to this particular program? Sometimes families will invite a bunch of people and they'll miss one family, and then that family get very offended and, oh my God, why wasn't our family invited? We invited them. You have all this drama in communities. It's a funny drama, right? And people really, really get upset. It's like serious stuff. It's like, oh, well, I'm not inviting them next time. They didn't invite me, right? Rarely do we get accept when Sayyid al-Shuhada invites us over and over and over and over and over again. If we weren't invited to the masjid, rarely do we get accepted. Rarely do we care. So, oh, I missed that program. Oh, I didn't go to that program. It's no big deal. And now this is an invitation from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I want us to think about this. This is an invitation from Imam Hussein. Divine guidance is an invitation. How do we know we're being invited? If we get tawfiq, that's it. That's all you need. You just need the ability to say, I can show up. Most of religion, if you want to know what 90% of religion is, it's tawfiq. The other 10% is being there, showing up. So if we miss this opportunity, this tawfiq is taken away from us, and we don't get the opportunity. Now, one of the ways that tawfiq is taken away from us, it's, somebody asked me this question once. They said that there's a class that I've been teaching for several years, and somebody asked me this question. They said, you've taught this class for several years, and why do you keep teaching it? Like, I don't understand, why do you keep teaching it? It's been several years now, why don't you just take a break? And I always say this, I say, I'm very scared of the day that God takes away the opportunity to teach it. Because that's the worst punishment. The worst punishment is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away this opportunity of us to do these things. So in the last few nights, we've been talking about some concepts. These concepts of imla, this concept of istidraj, this concept of when somebody does something evil, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lengthens their time so that they can do more evil, and this is a punishment on them. Imla, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them time so that they can change. Allah gives us that time so that we can change. And we talked about the solution to this is very simple, that we repent. We turn around and we repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we spoke about that there's two doorways to repentance, and the first doorway is to have hope in God. And this hope in God is an essential ingredient to our repentance. If we don't have this ingredient, then repentance gets closed. We cannot start off with changing ourselves if we don't have this internal sense of hope. Now, I want to read a tradition for you, mentioned by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and what the essence of this hope is. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says that, narrated by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, a believer is not but fearful and hopeful. So we talked about this balance. And everybody wonders, what's this delicate balance between having fear of God? What does that mean? And we explained it yesterday in the tradition of Imam Sadiq with the Luqman, that Allah gives this as a light in someone's heart. And a person, if they have all the good deeds of this world and the next, they should still be fearful. And if they have all the bad deeds of every human being in this world and the next, they should always be hopeful. But he says that a believer is not fearful and hopeful unless he responds or she responds in action to that which he or she fears and hopes for. So the Imam is saying that there is a difference between hoping and being deluded. You know, as an example, in some religions, for instance, in Christianity, in some branches of Christianity, I'll say that there is this idea that you just have to believe in once you believe in Christ, then anything you do, basically you're saved. That's it. Okay? Now, Islam is different. Islam doesn't believe that. Islam believes we have to have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, His endless mercy. But as the Imam says, he says that this hope, it's not true unless the person responds in action in regard to that which he fears and that which he hopes for. So how does a person respond in action? Through hope. The first way the person responds in action is they begin to do tawbah. Now, tawbah, as I said, is not an act. Tawbah is a lifestyle. It's this continuous turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, over and over and over and over and over again. Because the more we turn, the more we begin to change ourselves. Another tradition of Imam Ali I want to mention, he says that there are some people who commit sins and say we are hopeful. They remain in this condition until death comes to them. Then the Imam said, there are people who have been swept away by false hopes. They lie. They are not hopeful, because surely the one who has hope pursues it, and the one who fears flees from it. So the Imam is saying here is that there's a difference between hope and lying to ourselves. Because a human being as human beings, we constantly lie to ourselves, right? We constantly say, yes, I'm okay. My condition is good. I'm doing the right thing. And this lying to ourselves, it becomes habitual. We can do this. The Imam is saying here that this hope, this repentance to God has to be accompanied by action. It has to be accompanied by action. Now, if it's not accompanied by action, this is a sign that the person will go all the way till their death, continuing to hope. So, often I get this. Sometimes, I remember I used to have this neighbor, this non-Muslim neighbor, and he knew I was religious, so he would ask me, like, oh, where are you going? I would tell him, I'm going to the masjid. He always had this thing, he would be like, oh, good, go, pray for me. And, one day I looked at him. I mean, every single time he would be standing on the street, and I would be walking by, and he'd say, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the mosque." He'd say, "Oh, okay, pray for me." And one day I told him, I said, "How come you don't pray for yourself?" And he began to laugh. He said, "Oh, no, I don't do that. I don't do that." So this is a person who has false hope, right? He's literally lying to himself. He's literally having this idea that I'm going to get to the end of my life, everything will be okay. I'll die and then I'll go on my way. Now, there's a hadith I want to share with you here, narrated by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, hope is something that's intrinsic to the human being. We all have hope. But what we've been told by the Imams is that having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making Allah our last resort, is the most important thing. But sometimes what happens is this hope gets misplaced. As human beings, we begin to have hope in other things. We begin to have hope in people. We begin to have hope in employers, in school, in friends, in family, in whatever it is. And we don't have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like we should. And I want to read this hadith. He says, this hadith is narrated, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that the one who keeps his hope solely upon Allah, he will be sufficient for that person in all affairs of his life. The one who keeps his hopes solely only in Allah, Allah will become sufficient. In other words, a person who continuously practices just hoping in God, eventually God becomes enough for him. Why is it that we have hopes in all other things? We have hopes in all other things because we continuously commit this error. We continuously think that these things have power and the ability to change the course of our life. So then the Prophet says that if a person solely has hopes in Allah, he will be sufficient for that person in all his affairs. The one who keeps his hopes on the material world, on this dunya, Allah will leave him with this dunya. So the more we have hope in this dunya, the more God starts saying, okay, this is what you want. You can have this dunya. Allah gives us what we want. This is something we have to realize. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always gives us what we want. There's a hadith al-Qudsi that I will be to my servant what my servant expects of me. If we hope in a merciful Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond to us mercifully. Then he continues, he says, the one who wishes to reach his goals. Now he talks about the second type of person. He says, the one who wishes to reach his or her goals through disobeying Allah, he will be the furthest away from that which he wishes to achieve. Now, what does this mean? So, we have people who hope for things all the time, and this doesn't seem like, when we read this hadith, at first it doesn't seem like it makes sense. It's saying that the one who has hope in this dunya, Allah will just say, okay, don't have hope in me, let this dunya deal with you. If you just have hope in your boss, you have hope in your friends, you have hope, okay, then those are the people that you will have to deal with in your life. Then there's a person who has hope and says, I need to disobey God in order to achieve my objectives in life. I'll violate the rules of God. I'll break my fast. I won't pray. I won't do my obligations. I'll commit a particular sin. The Prophet says that he will be the furthest away from achieving his goals. Now someone can come to us and say, well, that doesn't make sense. I had hope in this particular job, and I got the job. Someone can say this. So how is it that I didn't get my goal? So when we read these hadiths, something that's very important is to begin to look at not only our lives, but look at other people's lives. This hadith is very, very important. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt have always told us, look at other people's lives. When you see people who disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you see them do this over and over and over and over and over again to achieve their goals, Ultimately, what are human beings trying to achieve in this dunya? They're trying to achieve happiness. This is why we do things. This is why we pursue anything in life. Nobody comes and says, oh, I just want to be miserable, right? Ultimately, we get a job, we go to school, we get married, we do this, we do whatever it is we do, whatever activities we do in life, we do it for one reason at the end, is to be happy. So when a person disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout their whole life to achieve a particular goal, and they think that that goal will eventually lead at the end of their life to happiness, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam here is saying that this will not happen. He says that he will be the furthest away from that which he wishes to achieve and will be the closest to difficulties. He will be the closest to difficulties. So now what is happening? Again, istidraj is happening. Allah says, okay, take these good things. Keep taking them. But if you keep taking them and you keep disobeying me, understand what you're taking. You're trying to achieve happiness. But at the end of your life, this is not what you're going to achieve. So how many people have we seen do this? They violate God's law, violate. When you see people who do everything and they violate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws, but I mean, you can take, like, I don't want to give names now from media, but you can, so many of these guys who are like billionaires and people like this, you take these types of people. There was like a billionaire recently, everybody was talking about, I'm not going to mention his name. I don't want to mention his name in this majalis, but anyways, there was some controversy with him, and you look at somebody like this and you say, okay, well, this guy's got everything, right? And then I remember reading that he made some comment online and then his daughter came out and said something against him, right? So many times you'll see people who seem to have everything, who seem to violate God's laws, you'll see them that their personal lives are a complete mess. That do they really have happiness? Did they really achieve happiness? Now remember what the Imam is saying. What the Prophet ﷺ is saying. He said that when a person has hope in Allah, Allah will eventually become sufficient for him. He will eventually, his heart will be, or her heart will be at rest. And then he continues. He says, he will change the pleasure of people towards him to be his disgrace amongst people. Now this is very, very important. That when a person disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they have hope in something, they put their entire hope in something, and they go and they violate God's law, they know it's wrong and they disobey Allah, not only will those people that they went to get approval from, they went to those people, eventually they will be disgraced in front of those people. So those same people that they put all that hope in, that they thought would honor them, eventually those people would be the people to turn on them. If we look in our lives and if we think about any time that we disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or somebody, just think about this. We disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we wanted the approval of somebody. Where are those people today? Do those people even matter in our lives today? Do they even care about us today? Are they relevant today? Many of those people, they don't even talk to us. If we would get sick, many of those people, they wouldn't even come care for us. They wouldn't, if we died, many of those people wouldn't even know. So the Prophet is saying, amongst those people, eventually, we would be a disgrace. Then he says, he will change the pleasure of the people towards him to be his disgrace amongst the people. Now, something that, if we look at the events of Karbala, look at what happened. Bani Umayyah, this is exactly what happened to Bani Umayyah. Bani Umayyah disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command. At first, the people loved Bani Umayyah. What happened? Within 60 years, there was a revolution. Bani Abbas took over. That's it. It wasn't very long that Bani Umayyah stayed in power. Quickly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed them. Then he says that the one who seeks to please the people while earning the displeasure of Allah, Allah will appoint those people to be above him, to rule him. So when we seek the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we break his rules, and we want to please these people, eventually God will appoint these people to have authority over us. They will begin to control us. Then he says, Allah will appoint those people to be above him, one who seeks to please God now, to please Allah while making others displeased with him through obeying them. Allah will be sufficient for him from the evil of the people. So this is something important. If there is an opportunity in our life, and we see this opportunity, and it's a chance to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not obey him, but with this choice is the pleasure or displeasure of people. The choice here is that the Prophet is saying that Allah will be sufficient for him from the evil of people. So when we always think about this in our head, whether it's at work, whether it's socializing with people, whether it's committing any type of sin, we think, well, if I don't commit this sin, if I don't do this particular thing, I won't be liked. This person won't be pleased with me. We always have this, and we're wrestling with this in our mind. What the Prophet here is saying is that if the person makes the correct decision, that Allah will be sufficient from the evil of people. In other words, this person will not be able to hurt us. They won't be able to do anything to us to affect our life. But it's our weakness of faith, right? In our weakness of faith, we think that, oh, this person has some type of power over us. They're special. They're an employer. There's somebody that has control over my rizq. There's somebody who has control over my social situation. I need to be so concerned with them. Then he says, the one who acts properly with that which is between him and Allah, Allah will make sufficient that which is between him and the people. So when we rectify our deeds, when we begin to slowly start to fix ourselves, just even if we're doing a particular sin, it can be anything from not praying. Just salat is very difficult in this society. Just praying salat is very difficult for most people. And God forbid you talk about salat al-fajr. That's like, oh my God. I know that's hard for some people. I know it is hard for some people. But even salat is very, very difficult for some people. People say, well, it's difficult. I'm at work and I do this, and then sometimes I forget, and sometimes I'm tired, and nobody encourages me, and sometimes even in a family, there's not encouragement. In some families, sometimes parents will not want their kids to pray. Sometimes spouses will not want the other spouse to pray. There are these challenges. There are these difficulties. It's not easy. But the Prophet is saying that if you do this, if you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah will begin to rectify what is between you and people. That the issues that you have with people, Allah will rectify that. And what does that mean? That means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these difficulties that we have with people, these will soon be, either we will develop satisfaction or contentment of the heart. It's not saying that everybody will change, everyone will become a nice guy, a nice person, but it is saying that whatever issues we have, either those issues will go away or we will become content with it. And all this is slowly beginning to change our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He then changes the relationship with people. See, it's not always, we have this idea, especially in the West, we have this idea that, there are people who sometimes, they have a lot of interpersonal problems. They don't get along with people. And they wonder, okay, well, I don't get along with this person, and I don't get along with that person. And part of this reason is that they haven't corrected, or we haven't corrected our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we begin to correct that relationship, then the relationships with people slowly start to clear up. They start to change. In this last part of this hadith, he says, Allah will make sufficient that which is between him and people. One who makes the right, which he performs in secret, Allah will correct that which he performs in the open. Allah will make him sufficient. Allah will make sufficient the affair of the one who works for his next life in all the affairs of this dunya. So the one who makes right those things that they do in secret. We all do sins in secret, right? This is something we all do. Nobody knows about it. Nobody's aware of it. It could be something we look at. It could be something we go and do. It could be people we associate with. It could be a particular relationship we have. If we correct that thing that we do in secret, and everybody does some sins in secret, right? And a matter of fact, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we see how merciful He is, that Allah is Sattar. Sattar means what? He's the one who covers. This is one of His attributes. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to lift that veil, we have a hadith about this, that if Allah were to lift that veil and people were to know what we do in secret, people wouldn't talk to us. People wouldn't associate with us. Just imagine, right now, I want everyone here to imagine, if, let's just say that veil were removed. Let's just say in this room, let's say all the veils were removed. And let's say there was a way, a trick, a means where all of the sins that we do in secret were put right in front of us, and everybody around you could just see it. I would be the worst off because you guys are all in front of me, so that's... But just imagine that all your sins were piled up there, and everybody else in the room could actually see what is in front of you. Imagine what everybody in the room would think of you right now. So this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that if we correct what is done in secret, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrects our actions that we do also in public, the other things we do in public that we don't even realize sometimes. So the culmination of this hadith is that when we correct our akhirah, then our dunya becomes corrected. It's not the other way around. We have it inverted. Many times we say, well, I have to do this first in my life, then I'll go to Hajj. I have to do this first in my life, then I'll go to Ziyarah. I have to do this first in my life, then I'll wear hijab. I'll have to do this first in my life, then I'll pray. I have to do this first in my life, then I'll fast. Then I'll become religious. We'll never do it. It will never happen that way. It just doesn't happen that way. That's not the system. That's not how it happens. That's impossible. Because we will be chasing that thing forever. We will be trying to fix that thing in dunya forever. How many times have you heard this? I've heard this, I don't know, countless times from friends, from people. How many times have you heard this? It's a very famous one. We do this when you're young, you do this. You ask this question, if you had $1 billion, what would you do? And everyone answers this question. Oh, I'd give money to my parents. I'd help the poor. I'd help this. I'd help that. How many people say this, but when they get that, do they actually do it? How many people? I've heard this so, even from close friends, I've heard this, oh my God, if I was rich, I'm going to do this. I have friends today that are very wealthy. I call them and I say, how's it going? I haven't talked to you. Oh, it's going great. I'm so busy. Oh, I said, how's your business going? Business is going great, but it's just super busy. I said, oh, have you gone to Hajj? No, I haven't had a chance. It's been 20 years. You made your first $1 million 20 years ago. What happened? It's just so busy, family. I said, does your family want to go? They said, yeah, my family wants to go. My spouse, she keeps bugging me, but I have work. We don't fix our material life and then think our spiritual life it doesn't work that way. It's actually completely the opposite. We begin to slowly fix the spiritual life. We begin to slowly fix ourselves. And then what happens is our dunya slowly becomes fixed. Now, when I say spiritual life, I don't mean you go and you pray, you sit in a room and you pray 24/7. That's not what I'm talking about. Sometimes young people, they'll do this. They'll go and they'll say, okay, that means I just have to pray, or I have to do this particular thing. What it means, the spiritual life means giving the haqq to that which it deserves. So the prayer has a right. The fasting has a right. All of these things have rights. It's very interesting. After Karbala, Imam Sajjad, he's known for two things. The Sahifa Sajjadiyya, which is focused on what? Tawbah, which we've talked about. Risalat al-Huquq, which is focused on what? The huquq of people, the rights of people. We can't fix, when we talk about religious affairs, we have to fix these two areas. So, if a person believes that in religion, when they start to fix these areas of their life, that they just have to fix, okay, I'm praying, I'm fasting. There's even some people who say, I'm doing Salat al-Tahajjud. Once somebody had asked me, Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Once somebody had asked me, they'd come to me and they had mentioned to me, they said, I don't understand religion. This is an adult. She, I don't know, she was maybe almost close in her 30s, mid-30s. She had children of her own, 3 children of her own. She had been married for a while. She said, I'm coming to you. She said, I don't understand religion. I said, okay, well, what's your question? She said, my parents don't get along. They've never got along, ever. For 30 years, they never got along. And now they want to get divorced. And now it's even worse. And they've had problems, and my father did this, and she went on a long list of things. And she said, my mother did this, she had some problems too. And I said, okay, so what's your question? And she said, I don't understand. Every day I lived in my house growing up as a child, my father prayed his prayers on time. Every day, I remember as a child, my father would wake up in the middle of the night and he would do Salat al-Tahajjud. We went for ziyarat. We went for Hajj. But I just don't understand religion then. This is an example of when we don't correct the affairs, religiously, when we don't correct things in the home, when we neglect the rights of the home. If we don't give proper spirituality, if we don't give the proper haqq to that which it deserves, then our affairs will be distorted. Then we'll have problems in our religion. So when we look at Karbala, this is a prime example of what we learn from Karbala, because what we see in Karbala is this exact thing. We see the family of the Prophet, peace be upon them, in every interaction, in every moment, in everything. Everything is given its proper right. Everything. There's not a detail missing. When the story of Salat is there, and they go to Imam Hussein, they say, you're going to pray Salat now? And he says, this is the reason why we're here, to pray Salat. When Qasim comes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and asks permission to go out, I want you to think about this. We talk about these stories, we say, oh, Ali Akbar comes to Imam Hussein and asks his permission. Oh, what a nice story. Oh, it's a beautiful story. Ali Akbar comes and he asks permission from Imam Hussein. It sounds so nice. We never stop and think, why did he ask permission? He was a grown man. Could have just gone. I mean, how many 18-year-olds today ask permission for their parents for anything? For anything. And even if they do and their parents say no, how many 18-year-olds would even listen? Right? But everything was put in its proper place. Right? And he would go to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They would all ask Imam Hussein, give me permission to go out and fight. Even the tiniest things in Karbala were taken care of. The tiniest things. Nothing was left undone. But that relationship between Ali Akbar and Qasim, that relationship was built. It was that relationship they had with Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein taught them this respect. How did he teach them this respect? Because he was respectful to them. He taught us the example of an uncle. He taught us the example of a parent by the way he acted. We see that interaction at Karbala. So in this time of Arbaeen, and we think of all the shuhada of Karbala, we think of Ali Akbar, first of all. Ali Akbar was the first of those who came forward. When the ladies saw him, they would hold on to him while saying, have mercy upon us. We are strangers and we have no strength to lose you. However, seeing the Imam at this time all alone, surrounded by those who wanted to kill him, he approaches his father and asks for permission to go into the battlefield. Imam Hussein would start to tear up, and Ali Akbar knew that the tears of his father were a sign of his permission to fight. When Ali Akbar went into the battlefield, these were the words that he says. He says, I am Ali, son of Hussein, son of Ali, by the Lord of the Kaaba. We are closest to the Prophet. By Allah, the illegitimate son will never govern us. I hit with the sword defending my father, the hit of the Hashimi Qurayshi youth. And when we look at the other martyrs of Karbala, when we look at Abbas, and when Abbas goes out to get that water, and he comes back with that water, and his arms were cut, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam has to go to his brother, Imam Hussein alayhi salam goes to Abbas, and parts of his body are laying on the sands of Karbala, and the tears of the Imam are dripping in the sand, and he's looking at Abbas in those final moments. This was the last time he would see Abbas. Abbas was the one who was there to defend the Imam, and now the Imam knows that he'll be alone. When we look at Qasim, when we look at the other shuhada of Karbala, we see each one of them went one by one out to fight for Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein had to witness each one of these shuhada being killed. He had to witness his nephews, his sons, his friends, until the Imam was left all alone. And when we think of Imam Sajjad had to be there in the tent, hearing the voices of the children scream. He had to hear outside the battle, and he knew he couldn't go out and help the Imam. He had to hear the voice of Zainab wail because he knew Imam Hussein was killed. Imam Sajjad was there when the tents were being burned, when the children were running. Imam Sajjad was there. He had to be chained when all the children were taken in a caravan. And the head of Imam Hussein was put on a spear in front of his children. And the children had to look at the head of the Imam while walking in the desert. Zainab had to tell the soldiers to put the head of the Imam in front so that people wouldn't look at the children and the women whose hijab was taken from them. And the caravan of the Imam went from city to city to city. And each city they would take the head of the Imam. And the army would bring people from the city to begin and poke fun at Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Bayt would be forced to stand there while people made fun of them. Imagine Zainab, imagine her brother. His head was there. And she had to watch as people mocked the head of the Imam, as people mocked the tragedy that was happening to them. People would throw objects at them. People would call them criminals. And the caravan went from city to 17 cities in the Islamic world. And they were told that these were criminals when this was the family of the Prophet. This is where the cradle of revelation came from. This was Hussein. This was the same head that the Prophet held. This was Hussein. This was the same head that the Prophet kissed. This was Hussein, the same person that the Prophet cried over. It said that one day the Prophet had a dream that Hussein alayhi salam would be killed, and he woke up crying. And he was asked by his wife, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "I have seen Hussein in my dream being killed on the banks of Karbala." And he went to Fatima and he said, "Oh Fatima, your son will be slaughtered, but you will not be able to see it. And you will not be able to defend him. You will not be able to hold him." It said on the Day of Judgment that Fatima, she will be there before those who come on the Day of Judgment. and she will be a shield from the fire for those who wept for Hussein. The family of the Prophet was taken from city to city to city. Then they were taken to Sham. And what was Sham? As the family of the Prophet walked step by step in that hot sand with those chains around them, and people were making fun of them, with the head of Hussein there, entering into the court of Yazid. For days and days of humiliation and thirst, they come into the court of Yazid, the most vile human being. And Yazid began speaking to them harshly. Then Zainab and the family of the Prophet are put in prison. And the daughter of Imam Hussein, the conditions of that prison were so bad. The daughter of Imam Hussein dies in that prison. There's no mercy for the children of the family of the Prophet. Eventually, the family of the Prophet is released. Ahlul Bayt goes back to Medina, and they begin the majlis of Hussein. Zainab does not even have one day of rest. From trauma to trauma to trauma. And al-Baneen begins the majlis of Imam Hussein in Jannat al-Baqi, recounting the horrors of Karbala. We read these stories of Karbala, but Zainab has to tell the story, every detail that happened at Karbala. She has to tell how each family member was murdered. She has to tell people where the body parts were of Abbas, how they were slaughtered, the way they were slaughtered. She has to tell people the last words of Hussein. And on Arbaeen, Zainab then has to go back to the place where Imam Hussein is buried. She goes back to that grave of Al-Hussein. Imagine, take yourself back to that point where Zainab is walking step by step to the grave of Imam Hussein. She's going back to the place where her family was massacred, where she saw her brother die. She's going back to every spot she saw the body parts of the family of the Prophet. She goes back to the grave of Hussein and begins to weep on the grave of Hussein. She remembers all the time she had with Hussein. She remembers the last moments of Hussein. She remembers the conversation of Imam Hussein to her, that, "Oh Zainab, I'm leaving you now, but what you're going to endure after this will be unspeakable." Imam Sajjad is there at the grave also, and he begins to cry, remembering that he could not be there to help his own father. When they came and the enemy began to shoot arrows at Al-Hussein, until finally Imam Hussein couldn't stand anymore and he fell. And they came and sat on the chest of Hussein. They came and sat on the chest of Hussein. And then they cut the head of Imam Hussein. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the shafa'ah of Fatima to Zahra on the Day of Judgment. We pledge our allegiance to Imam Hussein on this day. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help all those who are oppressed, the sick, the helpless, the homeless, the widows, the orphans, the refugees, the prisoners, all of those today who are experiencing difficulty. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive all the marhumeen, and we ask Allah to include us in the company of Sahib al-Zaman and give solace to the Imam of the age. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. The salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
يا رحمة الله الواسع يا باب النجاة الأمة مظلوم كربلا كربلا يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما محمد و آل محمد. اشعار است زبان آل بی زینب با هم گوش میکنیم و زمزمه میکنیم. یک اربعین برای تو ایران شدم حسین، مانندگی سوی تو پریشان شدم حسین، با چند قطره اشک دل من سبک نشد، ابری شدم به پای تو باران شدم حسین. زلفی اگر که من برایت سفید شد، در اول بهار زمستان شدم حسین. کوفه به کوفه کوچه به کوچه گذر گذر، قاری شدی مفسر قرآن شدم حسین. دیدی چگونه آخر عمری دلم شکست، دیدی چگونه پاره گریبان شدم حسین. تو رفتی و کنار خودم گریه می کنم، دارم سر مزار خودم گریه می کنم. هرچند در مسیر سرت ازدحام بود، اما درست مثل همیشه امام بود. بی تو سوار ناقه ای وریان شدم حسین، با دست سنگ صورت تو خط خطی شده از بس که آفتاب تو نزدیک بام بود. تو رفتی و کنار خودم گریه می کنم، دارم سر مزار خودم گریه می کنم. ام پیرن که ماند برایم بدن نداشت، ام پیکری تو روی زمین پیران نداشت. ای بی کفن برادرم، ای بوریان شین، این چادرم لیاقت خلعت شدن نداشت. آنگونه ای که من وسط خیمه سوختم، پروانم دل و جگر سوختن نداشت. غریب مظلوم ابا عبدالله الحسین صلوات. حسین جانم، 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 حسین جانم. نمی گویم چه ها دیدم که از من با خبر بودی، نمی گویم چه ها دیدم که از من با خبر بودی. به ارکوی گذر کردم تو با من سفر بودی. حسین جانم، حسین جانم، حسین جانم، حسین جانم. نمیدانم چسان بی تو بسر از می وطن دارم، نمیدانم چسان بی تو بسر از می وطن دارم. ز اژده یوسفم با خود فقط یک پیرهن دارم. ز اژده یوسفم با خود فقط یک پیرهن دارم. حسین جانم، حسین جانم، حسین جانم، حسین جانم. گلم پر پر شد و بوی گلا باید ز خاک او. گلم پر پر شد و بوی گلا باید ز خاک او. بگو ای باغ سرخ من گل من کو، گل من کو. بگو ای باغ سرخ من گل من کو، گل من کو. حسین جانم، حسین جانم، حسین جانم. بغیر از اشک چشم خود نیاوردم گلابی را. بغیر از اشک چشم خود نیاوردم گلابی را. که من هرگز ننوشیدم بدون گریه آبی را. که من هرگز ننوشیدم بدون گریه آبی را. حسین جانم 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 حسین جانم. صلوات محمدی.
صلوات دوم بلندتر. اگر حسین بپذیرد مرا به نوکریش، خدا به هیچ عذابی مبتلا نکند. کجا روم به که روی آورم که در دو جهان به جز حسین کسی درد من دوا نکند. ای خدا آشنایم زائر کربلایم، بر لبم ذکر لبیک کرده یا رب صدایم. آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین را. آشنای غریبم رفت صبر و شکیبم، آشنای غریبم رفت صبر و شکیبم. حق ارباب عطشان کربلا کن نصیبم. نیستم من غریبم آشنای حسینم، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین. آمده رو سیاهی با امید و نگاهی، آمده رو سیاهی با امید و نگاهی. یک نگاه رحیمی سوی غرق گناهی. تا سحر ناله دارم خاک پای حسینم، تا سحر ناله دارم خاک پای. آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو عبد این آستانم من هم از دوستانم، عبد این آستانم من هم از دوستانم. مرغ باغ مناجات جلد این آشیانم. نیستم من غریبم آشنای حسینم، آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را، آرزو دارم ارسال آرزو دارم ارسال صحبت از کربلا شد صحبت از کربلا شد راز دل برملا شد نیزه های شکسته روزه کربلا شد نیزه های شکسته روزه های بلا شد این دل خسته و این وای وای حسینم این دل خسته و این وای وای حسینم آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را آرزو دارم ارسال آرزو دارم ارسال هر شب جمعه آید فاطمه بین گودال هر شب جمعه آید فاطمه بین گودال تا سحر ناله دارد می شود خسته احوال کی رسد انتقام ماجرای حسینم کی رسد انتقام ماجرای حسینم آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را آرزو دارم ارسال اگه آرزو داری اربعین کربلا بشی بلند بگو آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را آرزو دارم ارسال سرورم بی کفن شد سرورم بی کفن شد پاره پاره به تن شد گوشه قتلگاهش مانده بی پیرهن شد این دل خسته و این وای وای حسینم این دل خسته و این وای وای حسینم آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را آرزو دارم ارسال اربعین کربلا را. خوشنودی آقا امام زمان، صلوات بلند.
بر خاک مزلت زدم پیش تو زانو قربان تو ای شاه مگردان ز گدارو شاه و شفا خانه تو روی نهادین بیمار گناه را تو طبیبی و تو دارو در خاتم انبیا محمد صلوات. آب زمزم قطره از جوی بار کربلا است. 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 آب زمزم کربلا تربت کربلا سر چشمه عین و شفاست. آب زمزم از جوی بار کربلاست آب زمزم بقعه شاه شهیدان جنت المأوا شده رتبه اش بر سرز اوج قرب اودنا شده گنبد زرین او از عرش هم اعلا شده فیض و تحت قبه اش حاجت روای هر دعاست آب زمزم قطره از کربلاست آب زمزم تربت کرب و بلا سر چشمه عین و شفاست آب زمزم آب زمزم چون کبوتر ملائک دور قبرش می پرد آدم و نوح و نبی و مهرش با نقد جان خرد یوسف از گلزار حسن او گل با خود برد زن که حسنش صورت آینه حسن خداست آب زمزم قطره از بار کربلاست آب زمزم کربلا سینه زنهای تو هستیم یا حسین ابن علی سینه یا ما گلستان مهر تو باشد گله بر سر شاخ گلت هر سینه زن چون بلبله ساقه عشق بکایت بهر این دل ها جزاست آب زمزم قطره از جوی بار بلاست آب زمزم قطره از جوی بار کربلاست کربلاست در خاتم انبیا محمد صلوات
فلک ظلم و ستم بر زینب خون جگر کردی
یا حسین
از این غم تا قیامت خون دل خیر البشر کردی
یا حسین
طلب کردی به مهمانی شهید رازکین آخر حسین را سر بریدی خواهرش را در بدر کردی نترسیدی ز آه کودکان در روز عاشورا دوباره حلق اصغر را روی دوش پدر کردی ای آوا وینا باز اربعین آمد باز اربعین آمد ای آوا ویلا باز اربعین آمد
باز اربعین آمد
حشر غم انگیزی اندر زمین آمد اندر زمین آمد ای آوا ویلا باز اربعین آمد
ای آوا ویلا باز اربعین آمد ای
ویلا باز
اربعین آمد
امروز اندر ماسوا فریاد و ویلات اندر زمین کربلا هنگامه عظمت بیسو پریشان مو کنند موی کنزارت شور و نوا دارد نسبت کبرا بار حسین خود دارد عذاب برپا ایا و ویلا باز اربعین آمد
ایا و ویلا باز اربعین آمد
امروز از اوج فلک آید ملک گریان امروز از اوج فلک آید ملک گریان در کربلای پربلا با شورش و افغان اندر ضریب شاهدین افسرده و نالان در حلقه ماتم از دیده گریانن بر سر زنان جمله سر در گریبانن ایا و ویلا
باز اربعین آمد ایا ویلا باز اربعین آمد
چاوش غیبی هر زمان بر گوش ما آید چاوش غیبی هر زمان بر گوش ما آید گویا نوای رود و رود از کربلا آید هر لحظه صوت حزین و هم دل ربا آید امروز غوغایی در عالمین هستی بار حسین هم در نشأتین هستی ایا ویلا باز اربعین
آمد ایا ویلا باز اربعین آمد ایا ویلا باز اربعین آمد
اربعین چه پر عزاست ویلا ویلا اربعین چه پر عزاست ویلا ویلا کربلا ماتم سرات ویلا ویلا اربعین چه پر عزاست ویلا بر مزار شاهدین یا رسول الله زینب نالن حزین یا رسول الله کنجگر زینب دین یا رسول الله شور قیامت بپات ویلا اربعین چه پر عزاز ویلا ویلا اربعین چه پر عزاز ویلا ام لیلا در فغان یا رسول الله بر علی نوجوان یا رسول الله قامتش همچون کمان یا رسول الله هم باغم مبتلات ویلا اربعین چه پر عزاز ویلا ویلا اربعین چه پر عزاز ویلا الظلم قوم لعین یا رسول الله رزان بادر شبرین یا رسول الله معلم دل خون غمین یا رسول الله دائم زین ماجرات یا رسول الله کربلا چه پر عزاز ویلا ویلا کربلا ماتم سزاز ویلا ویلا اربعین ماتم سرات ویلا علیکم اللہ باراگو پیمبر کہ علی جان منت ہم بجان غریبو اسم محمد صلوات
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all your azadaris. Inshallah, we have about 20 minutes maybe to door prayers, inshallah. If you need to do your wudu, if you need to use the restroom, please take this time, refresh your wudu, use the restroom, and please be here by 1 o'clock. We will do adhan, and we will have door and asr prayers, inshallah. And then after namaz, we have lunch will be served, inshallah. Please be here. Food has been prepared for all of us, inshallah. So, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.